Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, Isis, Imitation of Life. The Goddess Next Door helps a young black girl overcome racism during the era of Jim Crow in this Golden Age Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Imitation of Life in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. I got a comment from one of my viewers who watched my video, almost half of American jobs are low-wage jobs, who told me that many of those jobs that are out here that are low wage are actually part-time jobs. And on doing my research, I began to find that many of those jobs were part-time jobs. And if this is going to be the case for America's workforce, we are going to be in some serious trouble as related to the overall long-term health of the economy, because part-time jobs do not sustain an economy full-time, nor do they allow Americans an opportunity to build anything substantive, because if somebody is working part-time, then they don't make enough money to be able to go out here and build anything substantive. And this is what's leading to what I call the neutral effect in the American economy, where we have all of these jobs, but many of those jobs aren't really helping America's economy grow in a significant fashion, because the main reason why America's economy, I see it as stuck in neutral, is because we have so many Americans working low-wage jobs, and those low-wage jobs really don't help Americans to grow by developing new skills or raising the capital to do things like move out of a parent's home for many young people, or for older people to be able to go out here and do things like buy a new home or buy a brand new car. And I believe the main reason why so many jobs out here are part-time is primarily due to the Affordable Care Act that was passed in 2009. And that Affordable Care Act mandated that companies had to give all of their employees health care. And because they were mandated to give all of the full-time employees health care, many companies wound up cutting people's hours back to part-time. And as they wound up cutting their hours to part-time, they wound up cutting their wages as well. And that's one of the things that I believe led to the large amount of low-wage workers rising in America's economy over the last decade, was the Affordable Care Act and the way it mandated for companies to have health care for all of their full-time workers. So they wound up cutting people to part-time, and they wound up cutting their wages down practically in half, because part-time workers, they usually work anywhere from 25 to 28 hours, and usually they work for lower wages than a full-time worker, because sometimes a full-time worker gets a salary, whereas a part-time worker usually winds up working an hourly wage, or they usually wind up these days, in some cases, working on a per-job basis. And again, all of these things have been done to circumvent the Affordable Care Act, which was designed to ensure that employees got health care if they worked full-time. Unfortunately, what happened is that many small businesses just could not afford to give their employees that health care, because it would practically put them out of business. So they wound up adapting by going out here and giving out this part-time labor. And this is what really has depressed wages for a lot of people out here. And in addition to that, we have all of these other businesses out here, corporate businesses, also adopting this business model where they just go out of their way to hire part-time workers and pay those workers an hourly wage, when these people probably would have gotten an hourly, not an hourly, but a yearly salary instead. And again, I believe that is partially due to the Affordable Care Act nationally and many states implementing their own healthcare systems that led to people many businesses cutting back people's hours and leading to all of these low-wage part-time jobs. And I believe that there's going to be some devastating effects on America's economy overall, because this is the main reason why our economy really has not picked up the steam it usually picks up and has remained in a neutral state, similar to the L recession of Japan in the 90s, I believe, and early 2000s, where while the economy just flatlined for years. And yes, there were plenty of jobs, but those jobs really did not help anybody do anything substantive, like be able to save up enough money to go out here and buy one of these brand new cars or one of these homes, big ticket items, which now are priced out of people's grasp these days, because today you have cars that cost $60,000 and you have homes which cost anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 to $2 million in many cases. And if your American workers are working for minimum wage and you have almost half of the country working for minimum wage, then no one can afford to go out here and purchase any of those big ticket items that allow them to move their lives ahead. And that's something that is leading, again, to a lot of the frustration in the streets these days. Most people out here, they've gone up to college, they've got these degrees, and they find themselves not able to get a full-time job that allows them to make a salary where they can start building a life for themselves. All they can find are these low-wage part-time jobs with very little mobility, and these low-wage part-time jobs where there are very few opportunities for advancement and growth. Because when it comes down to part-time jobs like working in places like retail or working gig jobs where you're doing freelance or temp jobs, there's not room for any advancement, and there's no room for you to increase your skills or increase your salary. So a lot of people out here, they're extremely frustrated because they can't achieve anything that allows them to make any steps towards the American dream. And part-time jobs, again, they have a devastating effect on the economy, because if people cannot rise to another level, especially Generation Y, Millennials, Generation Z, and some Gen Xers like myself, then what happens is you wind up with an economy that may collapse sooner rather than later, because if people can't come up to the next level and your baby boomers are getting older, then they're staying on the job longer and they're just not retiring, or what's going to happen is you're going to have a group of people who are just too old to maintain the country, and you're going to have a group of younger people who never got any opportunities, and they have no incentive to buy into the country or buy into anything because nothing was invested in them. And that's why we have so much apathy these days, where we have large groups of men just walking away from the job market, large groups of men walking away from life because they feel like they cannot achieve anything. And that's all due to our job market being a complete mess, because, again, part-time jobs do not allow someone to have a full-time life, nor do they allow anybody to build up enough economic resources to go out here and build anything substantive, especially if you have to work 2 or 3 of these part-time jobs that pay low wages, because oftentimes the cost of transportation oftentimes negates any sort of savings you could build. Because if you have to drive cross town from one part-time low-wage job to go to another part-time low-wage job, that takes gas out. That gas costs money. And if you have to do like here in New York, transport yourself on a train from one part-time job to another part-time job, then you're not really making any money at the end of the day. And oftentimes you're just so tired because these jobs have erratic schedules, that really aren't consistent, and these jobs oftentimes have hours that are just so erratic that you cannot go out here and do things like go to school to get better skills or even look for a better job. So these jobs really, they prevent people from growing, and this whole economic model that has evolved ever since the days of the Great Recession, it has really done damage to it's going to do long-term damage to the economy, because in order for an economy to grow, you need people in stable jobs where they can get consistent growth. And unfortunately, we don't have that type of economy anymore, because if half of your workers are working in low-wage jobs where they have no stability, no opportunities for advancement, and no way to increase their salary or their skills, then you're not going to have people who can contribute to that economy by providing a growing tax base, or someone who can go out here and buy those big ticket items like new cars and homes that allow America's economy to thrive, because it's a consumer-based economy. Because if your consumers don't have enough money to go out here and buy items, then your consumer-based economy is in danger. And that's what many baby boomers don't understand about having almost half of the country working low-wage jobs, because if half your country is working low-wage jobs, then they can't buy into America, they can't buy into America's economy, and if they can't buy into America's economy, they're going to drop out. And that's something your baby boomers aren't thinking about, because they're thinking, I got mine, F you, not understanding that the people they're saying F you to are going to sooner or later going to walk away from them as they get older. And as they get older, there's not going to be anybody there to support them, because they didn't make an effort to support the workers of today. And because those workers didn't get support today, they're not going to care about tomorrow. And that's the big problem with this business model of hiring part-time workers, is that part-time workers, again, cannot support an economy full-time. And this economy has been a mess ever since that Affordable Care Act derailed everything with mandating that full-time workers get health care. And again, that policy has just done serious damage to the overall economy and has impeded the growth of the overall economy. Because again, part-time workers cannot contribute to a full-time economy. And when you have adults working like teenagers, how does that help adults go out here and be able to participate in the economy the way adults do, by buying new cars, buying homes, and building a nest egg for their retirement and the future? If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, the Spinsterella trilogy, and my nonfiction books like The Man Crisis, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, ISIS, All That Glitters. The Goddess Next Door takes on a bikini-clad bank robber in this action-packed, all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, All That Glitters in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.